And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 152nd edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 563rd episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, December 26, 2019. I am your host, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
The Crossroads Classics is held every year in Indianapolis, and recently it seems that the games that IU play in involve a big lead, a comeback, and an exciting finish. Well, this year was no different. This week's banner moment occurred with just over 3 minutes left in the game versus Notre Dame when Indiana found itself down 5 after leading by as many as 17, and Coach Archie Miller inserted freshman Armand Franklin into the game. Franklin and Trace Jackson Davis, two freshmen, took over on both ends of the floor to secure an Indiana victory. Many fans, myself included, were quick to question the toughness of this team at that 3-minute mark, and while it may have been merited in giving up the big lead, the Hoosiers found a way to erase that 5-point lead. That takes toughness. The idea that two freshmen scored the last 7 points and played great defense during that stretch speaks volumes to this team's depth, which is another sign of toughness. While we all would like to see the Hoosiers healthy and playing more consistently over 40 minutes of every remaining game, we cannot neglect the fact that while not playing their best with those injuries and with a rather young roster experience-wise, the Hoosiers are where most thought or hoped they would be, and that is 11-1. This record puts them in consideration for an NCAA berth. Many bracketologists have the Hoosiers currently a 6 or 7 seed. With the remaining schedule being littered with quad one opportunities, the Hoosiers should be able to compete and win enough to make the tourney this season. Anything more than that, and we as fans will take gladly. Maybe all of last year's tough injuries and close losses have turned around this year. Time will tell, and the first test is Arkansas on Sunday. A win by our Hoosiers means an undefeated non-conference record that, even with the somewhat suspect strength of schedule, still bodes well for the Hoosiers. That takes toughness. Here's to hoping that the toughness is here to stay and is more consistent, and Indiana continues to win, ugly or not. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-hosts for this week's show. Jared and Andy are both off tonight, probably ensconced comfortably in a home field apparel hoodie somewhere that doesn't have the logo that Jared doesn't like. To my left, he's a senior writer for The Big Lead and a man who spent all of Christmas telling everyone he is Armand Franklin's shot doctor. He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your rant on the last week in IU basketball?
What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's having a happy holidays. Obviously, we've kind of not had much to talk about for the last week or so we've been off. But man, I've spent the holidays thinking about this and thinking about IU fans and where we are. And you know, a lot of people are upset and think that the Hoosiers haven't played a great schedule. But we mentioned this after the Notre Dame game. Indiana's 11-1 right now. Yeah, they played a weak schedule, but they didn't stub their toe in any of those games as part of the weak schedule, which a lot of other teams did, and nationally, not just in the Big Ten or you know, in Indiana. And you look at it, and they've played some tight games, and they've been managed to hold on in those tight games, and maybe they've blown some leads, but you know, as they did against Notre Dame, but they managed to find a way to win, and that's honestly the most important part of playing basketball is finding ways to win games. And it's more about winning games than necessarily winning pretty or looking good. It's about winning games. And that win against Notre Dame showed that they got down 5 points. It wasn't like they got down by 1. They gave up a 17-point lead, got down 5, and in the last few minutes still figured out a way to win that game, which, by the way, when they were down 5, I threw on the towel. I said, this is over. There's no way they're coming back. The momentum is completely against them. They're down a couple possessions. They were down 5, and Notre Dame had the ball and managed to come back and win. Really impressive that they were able to do that. Again, you don't want to blow that 17-point lead, just like you don't want to go to overtime against Nebraska. but finding a way to win is the most important trait a team can have. And so as we head to this Arkansas game and then have to go at Maryland, some tough, it's a tough road coming up. A couple of weeks, you got Ohio State and some really tough roads there for Indiana, some tough matchups. But we know from this start that this team has figured out how to win games. Hopefully, as everybody rounds into health, their backcourt's still kind of banged up. As everybody rounds into health, maybe this is a team that just has a knack for finding ways to find victory. We hope that's the case. We hope this isn't the team that went in Wisconsin and got run out of the building. And really, we'll find out over the next few weeks what kind of team this is and what kind of season this is going to be.
And to my right, he's one of the ringleaders of the Chatmob and the host of the new show, Hoosier Morning After. He also has a more intimidating last name than you do. He is Chad Schwarzkopf. Chad, what are your opening thoughts on the last week in IU basketball?
Well, it's been a fun week. It's been great for the guys to have time off. Again, happy holidays, like Ryan said to everyone out there. Those that are watching on YouTube and everything can see I'm not in my usual surroundings. I'm in my parents' house, and this afternoon I was getting some work done on the computer, and the internet was going in and out for me. So I was able to get it back on and get done what I needed to. While it wasn't as fast as I'd like to get the work done, I did. But that kind of obviously kind of parallels where this team has been. These recent games, we've had a few moments where things have run smoothly. They've been, but there has been some connection issues at times with this team. Also, like the team, I can't really point to what's going on with their internet. This team, it's very complicated like that as well, and we'll get that figured out. But for me, for now, I'll just kind of stick to cautionary optimism with this team. And this internet. So we'll see if I am able to stay connected and on this show tonight. But I think with this team, the ups and downs, it's what it is to be an IU basketball fan, to accept the good, the bad, and the frustration and the high blood pressure all together.
Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about this week. Obviously, Indiana defeating Notre Dame in the Crossroads Classic, and Indiana is 11-1, and more importantly, 3-0 versus its top non-conference opponents. With the Arkansas game left to play, we're going to talk about Rob Fennessy, Devontae Green, Doron Davis, Jerome Hunter. All have played less than they were expected for a variety of reasons. What we thought of at preseason. So how is Indiana still 11-1, and where will they be when and if these players get back to where they are expected to be? And then we'll answer your questions. All of that coming up this week on Assembly Call Radio. First, let's talk about tickets. You have a lot of options when it comes to where you get your sports tickets. And this is not an industry that is known for its growth and innovation or for being customer friendly. But with millions of live event tickets and a price match guarantee, SeatGeek proves that there is a better way. They built the fastest way to find tickets so that you can stop searching for the perfect seat and instead start enjoying it. Just look at the App Store. SeatGeek has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and the reason is because they deliver a better process for buying tickets. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web, and they rate each deal on a scale of 1 to 10, with a color-coded system to show the value. Green dots mean good deals, red dots are overpriced. Then SeatGeek displays the tickets on an interactive seat map so you can see right where they are. After every purchase, and every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets with confidence. I have SeatGeek app on my phone because it's by far the fastest and easiest way to find tickets. Currently been looking for games on Sundays, especially the Arkansas game coming up. I might be in Assembly Hall for that. If I do, it's because of SeatGeek. And best of all, SeatGeek will even give you $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use our promo code. So download the SeatGeek app today and use promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off on your first purchase. That's promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off on your first purchase. And the Hoosier headlines. Are we optimistic or pessimistic about the season so far, given the fact that Indiana is 11-1? And Ryan, I'll throw it to you. Where do you find yourself on that spectrum? Are you optimistic going forward, a little pessimistic with Indiana's 11-1 record at this point?
What makes me optimistic is that they're 3-0 in the big non-conference games that we earmarked and said they have to at least split these or maybe go 3-1. They got 3 wins against Florida State, UConn, and then Notre Dame. And then you've got Arkansas, of course, this weekend, a home game, a real chance to pay them back for what happened last year at Arkansas, and also to move 4-0 in those bigger non-conference games. That'll be a big win for Indiana. Arkansas, I believe they're in the mid-30s in Ken Palm, so that'd be a big win for them. It'd be the second best team they've beaten aside from Florida State. So obviously the Wisconsin game looms, and you're just like, oh, that was so discouraging. And I remember how we felt after that, and people talking about, oh, they were 8-0 heading in. They'd just come off that big win against Florida State, and where you started to feel really good about the team and the way they could perform on the big stage against a good team. And then they flopped at Wisconsin, and you're just like, okay, is this just a typical flop against Wisconsin we've seen over the years? Or is this legitimate? Is this who this team is? It's hard to know right now, but I think that winning those non-conference games and going 3-0 against those opponents, one of them in New York in a, kind of a big stage, makes me feel cautiously optimistic. We get cautiously optimistic, then we get the overtime game at Nebraska, and you feel awful about it, and then Nebraska beats Purdue. So is Nebraska better than we thought? I mean, it's just this year in college basketball is so jumbled and it's so torn up that it's hard to know exactly where they fit. I think the Arkansas game is kind of a bellwether game. I think that how they play in that game at home after a week off, a week of rest for guys, how are they going to be? Then you got to go at Maryland. So you're going to find out quickly in back-to-back games how this team really shapes up, which will, be two of the biggest games they've played so far. So again, it's cautious optimism, but let's see, let's see how they perform this week. I think that I'm kind of leaning more towards optimistic, especially given how some of the younger guys have played and some of the performances they've gotten off the bench in the last couple of weeks. So cautious optimism right here.
Chad, I'm going to throw the same question to you, optimistic or pessimistic, but I want to add something there. As fans, when we watch the team that we follow, do we struggle with the style over the substance? Meaning the record substance is 11-1. The way Indiana got to 11-1, when you watch every possession, sometimes gives pause. So, first of all, are you optimistic and pessimistic? And then, what about us fans with style over substance? In your thoughts?
I'm optimistic. I'll always be optimistic with the IU teams. I mean, it's one that you cheer for and you show up for each time. But I mean, there is pessimism. I believe that's kind of a post-traumatic stress syndrome from last year that we don't want to see.
How could you not have that over the last few seasons?
You've got to be cautious with that, I believe, to a degree. And I think that's kind of where that style and substance, like you said, kind of comes into play. I think we see the losing those big leads, and we start to go oh no, here we go again, kind of mentality drops into our heads. And we weather through those. And I think in the end, we're a very knowledgeable fan base. So we pick apart our team a lot more than your standard basketball team is going to get picked apart by its fan base. So I think we'll be good. I mean, our bench is deep enough, and once those pieces can hopefully slap together the correct way, we will be able to work it out.
Yeah, I join both of you in being optimistic. You have to be realistic about, the defense needs to get better and the three-point shooting needs to be better. They need to take appropriate shots, and we do a good job of breaking that down. That's realistic. But this team, as we'll talk in the second segment, hasn't really had its full team. It finally just got its 11 scholarship players all dressed for the first time in the last couple of games. But yet all of those players aren't up to where they were expected to be in the offseason. And the fact that the Big Ten is going to be a tough conference, and we're part of that, as Assembly Hall is a tough place to play. So teams have to come into our home court, and those are going to be a lot of good wins. We got several questions about Quad 1 and NCAA seeding in the community this week. But Indiana has just set itself up for some positives. I think it has nowhere to go but up. If it doesn't go up, then it's really going to be tough on these shows.
You're going to hear about it from us for sure.
Yeah,
but fair.
I think all of us and fans, if we were brutally honest, if you would have said Fennessy wouldn't have practiced much of the first 2 or 3 months, let alone play less than 50% of the minutes, Devontae Green missing some games and then being, just brought back into the starting lineup. We have yet to have our starting guard lineup as thought of in the offseason, and Indiana's still 11-1. After we calm down about the tough style of play and really look at the substance, I don't know many of us would have said 11-1. I think a lot of us were saying if we could be 12-1 or 11-2 or 10-3 in this portion of the schedule, it would still be a good thing for this team. And Indiana's one game away from being 12-1. So with that, I'm going to come back to Chad. What is your number one concern? And this is for both of you here in this segment. What is your number one concern for this Indiana team going forward at this point of the season?
It just has how it always is, and what kind of derailed us last year is keeping healthy and being able to practice together. Again, it's been lucky that finally, once we have everyone healthy, we have had this extended time between games to be able to practice together and have good reps and start building that chemistry together. That's why I think, like Brian said in the last little segment, this next game coming up is going to be very big about setting the pace, setting things up, and seeing a real improvement as we've had this time to practice together.
Ryan, your number one concern for this team?
It's keeping the guards healthy, I think, and making it so Armand Franklin can shine off the bench instead of having to play starters minutes. You know, I mean, regardless of how well he plays, he's a freshman. You don't want a freshman taking 30 minutes or 25 minutes a game. And you want him to be able to step in a game like he did at Notre Dame and shine, as opposed to having to be relied upon for huge minutes. I think that getting Rob Fennessy back to 100%, obviously he did not play very well in that Notre Dame game because – I mean, he's going to be up and down until he's, his health is at a regular spot for him. Devontae Green, consistency. So I just think it's consistency and health out of that backcourt. Obviously, Devontae's been dealing with a nagging Achilles injury as well. I mean, just when you want some good news about your backcourt, Rob Fennessy comes back, and it turns out that Devontae's a little banged up, and Rob's still not full go. And Al Durham, again, consistency. He's got to find some consistency from the outside with his shot. He's shooting about 39%, but it feels like he shoots really well one game and then really poorly the next. And you just want to see that consistency so you know what to rely upon. And you can say, okay, Rob's going to hit maybe 2-3 threes in this game. We know that. Let's just find those when we can, instead of he's going to hit 5 in one game and none in the next 2. And just finding that consistency, finding consistency defensively out of those guys, everything that has to do with the backcourt. I think the front court, all in all, has been outstanding this year. It may not be the same guys every week, but you're going to get some tough, hard-nosed defense. You're going to get some tough buckets on the inside, mostly from Trace Jackson Davis, but the other guys will chip in and help out. And so it's really about finding consistency and health for that backcourt.
For me, number one concern is defensively. I really appreciate good defense as a coach. I think you win a lot of games defensively. Still wanting to see the big lineup be able to guard a multitude of different lineups. We'll see that with Arkansas and their mainly 4-guard lineup. Even though that gives Indiana some advantages on the offensive end, can this team move up the Ken Pom rankings, and can it just play better all-around defense more consistently for 40 minutes? I think if that can happen, then I think Indiana is going to be okay and compete for a lot of wins in the Big Ten. So, okay, coming up, we're going to talk about the returning players who have battled injuries, played less minutes than expected. What can we expect from these guys moving forward? Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right, good first segment. We're right around 19:20.
One more concern, that GD high hedge. Ugh.
No kidding.
It makes me want to vomit every time I see it.
And the thing that really gives us trouble is when people put shooters in 2 corners and then they do that roll replace, or they dive that guy right to the basket, because then it's just long closeouts for everybody. And we have not figured out how to hedge and get back quickly. The Notre Dame game was nice because they were picking and popping more than they were picking and rolling.
Yeah.
A few times they rolled that Dunham guy or Durham guy. They got some good action, but they like to pick and pop more, and Indiana guarded that and the flare action. But I felt better about the defense, but it was a different type of offense that Indiana was guarding for the most part.
And Bray has always been like that. He loves that pick and pop and the flare screens and things like that more than he likes, a straight driving kick offense where you penetrate the middle and then kick it to the wings or the corners.
And am I blind? It seems like Trace doesn't have as much issue with that.
He doesn't because he doesn't high hedge.
Yeah,
He hedges under the screen, which is see. Here's the thing: Indiana's defense is supposed to be geared towards force them out, and what Brunk is doing is he's hedging super high to force them back, like to instead of driving to that angle to force back, and so then it winds up being your guy is corralled between two defenders. What he should be doing is hedging flat so the guy doesn't turn the corner and drive, but he doesn't need to step out way beyond the 3-point line. And you've seen it a couple times. He does it and the guy just dives inside of him straight to the hoop. So what he's doing is an old school high hedge that you do in man help defense. And it's to prevent, it's to force the guy to dribble back where he's coming from. And so he's doing something that, quite frankly, I do not think Archie Miller is teaching. I think it's just a fundamental thing that he's done his whole life, and he's doing it. And what happens with that is in man help defense, as opposed to the pack line, somebody rotates over and guards Brunk's man for him, and then he can dive back, get to his man, and then the other guy can close out to his guy in the corner or wherever he's helping from. The problem is that in the pack line, you're supposed to help, stop penetration and force the ball around. Well, if everyone else is stopping penetration, forcing the ball around, that means they're going to move the ball to the corner where that guy has just helped because he had to help sag off and help Brunk. So it's leaving wide open guys, or the guys aren't helping as hard because they shouldn't have to, because Brunk's doing the wrong thing, and Brunk should be trailing his man when he rolls off down the lane. So it's just everybody gets screwed up when he does that. And
it's a technique. It's a technique, and he plays so hard that when he does his technique and he does it hard, he does it too much, and then he can't get back.
Exactly, and it's just it's something he's probably been taught since he was 7 years old to do as a big guy. But in the pack line, that's not what you do. What you do in the pack line is you flatten out on that hedge to make sure the guy doesn't go by you, and that's it. You force him beyond the 3-point line. You're fine with him dribbling side to side on the 3-point line because there's other people there to help on that. But he's hedging hard, and you see Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis hedge below the 3-point line, and they've stopped penetration. Maybe once in a while they'll get caught doing that, but it's every time with Brunk. And it's funny because a few of the last two games, Brunk hasn't done it as much. And it's worked out way better. But it's an instinctive thing he's always done.
He gets too high. Even Trace Jackson Davis sometimes get above the 3-point line a little bit, but it's only one step, and then their athleticism allows them to come back. Yeah. So when they he and Race both. Needed,
he and Race both can recover.
They do a nice job.
So
of that. That's the same problem with Duran. Duran gets going and he can't stop because of either his injuries or his ability right now. He hedges, and then it's hard for him to get stopped, change direction, and come back. And he goes too high too, in my opinion.
It's sad with Duran, man. Because you watch videos of him in high school, he could move. And move, in short area quickness. He's not going to sprint down the floor. He's not Cody Zeller, but he could move. And it's kind of sad to see that he's really lost that ability.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that here. And we all right with the order? Fennessy, Green, Davis, Hunter, Thompson, or do we want to switch up the order?
Hunter Thompson. Oh,
not Hunter.
Yes. No, I think that works for me.
Good order. All right. You guys ready to roll?
They spelled Chad's name wrong on the sheet here.
Oh, no, that's never happened in my life at all.
Schwarzkopf?
Schwarzkopf.
Hey, that used to help us when we had, in the 90s, when we had telemarketers call.
No, you got it wrong. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that person doesn't live here.
Yep.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Okay, I need to hit unpause on the tape.
That would help.
All right, here we go again.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to the assembly call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcast or watch those replays and see all the Between the Segment banner, then check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Ryan Phillips and Chatmob Chad Schwarzkopf. And we're going to talk some players and where we see some of the players who haven't had all the minutes due to a variety of reasons. Are they going to see increased minutes? Are they going to get back to being healthy? We're going to start off with Rob Fennessy, who's just had a tough start in these first 12 games and first 2 or 3 months of getting healthy. And then once he has been back, getting up to speed, and it really struggled against Notre Dame. So, Ryan, when do you think we're going to see him back at full strength? And does that mean he eventually gets back in the starting lineup? And does Indiana need him to start in order to compete in the Big Ten?
I think they have to. I just think that he is one of those guys who's the engine that helps this team go. And there have been times where you've seen him come off the bench and it just completely changes what the team does. If you look at his averages from last year, 6.8 points. This year it's 8.3 points. It's last year he did have 3.3 rebounds, but Trace Jackson Davis is gobbling them all up right now. So he's down to 2.3. But assists, 3.7 this year, 2.9 last year. You look at his shooting percentage, 40% this year, 36% last year, 3-point percentage, 35.7 versus 31%. And he's doing that all in 9 fewer minutes a game. He's only played 7 games. But what it's looking like is that while it may look a little unbalanced when he's on the floor because he's not healthy, Rob's a better player this year and he's doing more in less time. So, and obviously the team's relying on him more as well. So it's a different dynamic. But, Romeo Langford isn't there on the perimeter to take most of the load away from him. So you've got a guy who is ostensibly a better player this year. He's playing fewer minutes. He's only played in 7 games of the 12, but at the same time, he's a guy who clearly has improved and can be better. The key is just going to be, again, being healthy. The other stat I didn't mention, he's averaging almost twice as many free throws per game, and he's shooting 85% versus 66% last year. If he's your main ball handler, he's going to be getting fouled. He's going to be at the line. He's performing there this year so far. You got to get him healthy, though. You got to get him healthy, got to get him on the floor and get him in the mix. And hopefully, this is his last sort of speed bump. I mean, Rob's, had issues with health, multiple different injuries since he's been at IU. If he's on the floor, Indiana's a better team, and he's a good player who can really make a difference. I think that's a guy who is a huge key to Indiana for the rest of the year.
Do you think, Ryan, that it'll be sooner or later for him to be back where he's at normal strength? I know he's had a couple weeks here, but he really struggled in Notre Dame more offensively than I thought defensively, getting back in the rhythm. When do you see that the Rob that we need and want back?
If there's no other setbacks, you have to think it's going to be first or second week of January, that he's going to be in the flow of everything. Now, I don't know if he's going to be starting. I don't know if he's going to be averaging 30 minutes a game, but you have to start at some point. You got to start seeing the normal Rob, and it's, I don't know if it'll be this week, but I have a feeling. I mean, we saw at the end of that Nebraska game, he was the reason they won. I mean, he was Mr. Buckets, and he and Trace Jackson Davis, you got to give him credit too, but he was Mr. Buckets at the end of that game. And it was like, oh my gosh, Rob's back. This is what we need. But then against Notre Dame, he struggled. And is it going to be a game to game thing? I mean, there was 8 days between those games. There's been 8 days between Notre Dame and Arkansas. It's a chance to maybe sort of, flatten that out a little bit, that curve out a little bit, and say, okay, this is going to be a good game for him. But then again, they're going to get a break before Maryland. It's all about getting him up to speed, getting him, to where he needs to be conditioning wise. But that I'm sort of looking at that January 8th Northwestern game. That's got to be where we start seeing the regular Rob and the consistent Rob, because again, the numbers suggest he's a better player this year in fewer minutes. So, you got to at some point start seeing that consistently.
I mean, I'm not looking for him right away to come out and be the scorer that he is, but I want to see him being the floor general, see him being the calming aspect, and everything. Just be the point guard guy that runs the offense, gets things moving, and calms down this team and refocuses us. I agree with Ryan wholeheartedly that I don't think we'll see his scoring and all of those factors back till a few more games. But I at least want to see more of that general out of him than we saw in the Notre Dame. I think the Notre Dame was probably an anomaly of some sort. He just kind of had an off game, getting his rhythm back. again, having this time to practice, hopefully that refocuses him and at least gets that portion of his game back to us.
I just think Rob is so important defensively for this Indiana team because he can take the number one penetrating guard and try to level him off. You know, when I did some edits for the community and watching the guards just really struggle to guard, Rob wasn't. And even Rob at not full strength was one of our better on-ball defenders. And then that just helps everyone else be in better position, not have to help as much. And so I agree that even if he doesn't come back offensively for 3 or 4 games, that's okay. We just need him out on the floor, getting his minutes and guarding, and then also running the show. I think Indiana's offense flows a lot better with a true point guard out there, and we've been asking Durham to do that, and Al's stepped up, but that's not his natural position. Al can do that for 10 or 15 minutes as needed
he's
and be
uncomfortable
very
in
efficient.
that role. You can tell he's uncomfortable in that role.
And so, you know, Indiana's 11-1, and Rob has not played in 5 of the 12 games and not played really complete games yet. I think he's a 30-minute guy, and if not more, for this Indiana basketball program. So, yes, as soon as he gets back, I think you're going to see a better Indiana team. Let's talk about Devontae Green. Started out the season hobbled and missing some action. Chad, do you think Devontae will ever be consistent in his play enough to lead Indiana to a good record, or do we need something different? If Rob's back, do we really need him to be consistent, or do we just need him to pop every third game for his 20, 25 and not mess up too much in those other games? What are your thoughts about Devontae and his play going forward?
I mean, Devontae's one of those it's funny to say the word consistent with Devontae because, yeah, you get so many different aspects of his game and who he is as a player is just kind of electric and on fire like that. You want to see him under control. He's a balanced guy. I want to see him moving forward, finding that balance between going out of control, doing the Devontae type of things, throwing those 100-mile-an-hour passes, but bringing it back a little bit when the game doesn't allow it. He gets too many times where he forces that kind of game that he likes to play on what the game is not giving him. There was a time in the Notre Dame game where I saw him heading towards the basket and he did one of his little behind the back dribbles and everything. And I immediately realized he's got tunnel vision. He sees the basket and he sees only the basket. He's not going to pass it. He's going to try to drive and make a shot. And sure enough, he drove in there. He tried to lay one up and he got rejected. And it was a quick fast break points for them. So, I mean, we don't need to see that kind of play out of him, but we do. I think that trickles down from Rob getting back. When Rob gets back and gets more into his realm and everything like that, I think that's going to relax Devontae a lot being in there with Rob because he knows that he can move a lot off the ball and Rob's going to find him in the right places. And that's where he's going to be able to knock down those shots and do those plays that we can count on from him.
And Chad, that play when he did that drive, I think if it's the same play I was thinking about, there was a wide open Armand Franklin in the corner, and Armand had already hit a couple shots.
Yeah, someone else was open on the other side. I don't remember who it was. But they were both wide open on the corners.
So, Ryan, my question to you is, with players like that, sometimes you have to give freedom, right?
Yeah.
You got to let them play their game because if you try to restrict them and eliminate the bad play, then it might restrict them enough and the good play doesn't shine. Jared asked an interesting question this week in the community about would you take the 11 points and the 1 of 5 shooting from 3 if we could get those stats every week or every game from Devontae? And I said no, I wouldn't because you need him to pop. And then if Fennessy,
you need a Florida State performance at some point.
You need that every once in a while in a big game to push Indiana over. And if Rob gets back, then you have some flexibility with the way Armand's playing, and you could play some other people if he's having one of his Devontae games in the negative. But what do you think about Devontae going forward? Is he going to improve, or is this what we have, and we just got to hope we have the hot Devontae more than the cold Devontae?
Well, one thing that's way better about Devontae this year is his shooting percentage inside the three-point line. He's up to 45% from the field. Last year he was 40.2. The year before that, 36.4. He's become a better driver, and you see him using that floater a little bit, sometimes getting all the way to the rim and finishing. It's not consistent, sadly, but we are seeing that better. His three-point percentage, I mean, even with a couple of stretch of really bad games, he's still at 40%, which is fine. Last year he was a 41% shooter. You'd like him to be a little better, especially on some of those step-in, catch and shoot opportunities. But he's also a guy like Rob Fennessy, who his numbers have improved this year in fewer minutes, probably, again, because Romeo Langford isn't there dominating everything on the perimeter. He's averaging 12.3 points, which is 3 more than last year, and he's playing a minute less per game. It's, again, it's the fact that these guys are developing and getting better. And it may not seem like it from the outside, but when you look inside the numbers, they are developing and getting better. The key, you're right, for Devontae, that 30-point Florida State game is raising that average of points per game. But there are things he can do on this team, and he reminds me so much of when Troy Williams was on this team, because there are things he can do that nobody else on this team can do. Take a guy off a dribble and pop a three. I mean, how many guys on this roster can do that? And it's really, he's the only one. And so the reason why, even when he was bad, Troy Williams was on the floor is because he could go between his legs sideways and go flying in and lay a ball in like nobody else could. And it really helped unbalance the floor for the opposing defense. So I think Devontae's got to play. He's got to get more consistent. I mean, we're not seeing the volume of turnovers this year that we've seen in the past. Everyone sort of stands out because it's usually a spectacularly bad turnover, but we're seeing fewer of them on a game-to-game basis, especially with how much he's handled the ball with Rob Fennessy out. And so I think that he's a guy, again, you've got to find that consistency from. I don't think you're ever going to get it, as you said, Coach, just 11 points every game on 1 of 5. You're not going to get that out of him. You're going to have games where he gets 2 points and goes, 1 of 10 from the field, but you're also going to get that game where he pops and he's on fire and he's the only guy you want to see touching the ball sometimes on offense. I think, again, Rob Fennessy coming back helps with that. I think with everybody on the perimeter, Al Durham is another one. When Rob Fennessy comes back, it changes the dynamic on both ends of the floor because he takes the opposing team's ball handler defensively, and then he's handling the ball, and those guys get to play off the ball, which is easily their better position. I don't know if it's where Devontae is more comfortable, but it's where he's better. It's where, driving and kicking and catching a step in, a shot he's stepping into as opposed to between the legs and firing one up. That's where he's better. And also off a defensive rotation, I like seeing him drive to the basket. I don't want to see him go between his legs in traffic anymore. I'm kind of sick of that by now, but I don't mind him driving in, taking a float or putting one up, especially because if he misses it, the chances are pretty good that IU is going to get an offensive rebound with the guys they've been putting out there this year. So I don't mind him getting into the lane, maybe getting fouled and getting a shot up. But I think that Rob Fennessy has to be on the floor to add that consistency to his game.
You said a couple things, Ryan, that I think are really, really good. Indiana needs a north-south guy because this offense is geared to throw the ball in the post, and they're now running some screens, blocker mover stuff, and it's either going to be outside threes or it's going to be at the rim. They're going to need a guy to break someone down and get to the rim, get fouled, and Devontae's done that nice. And the other thing that you reminded me of that I forgot is that he really isn't turning the ball over. And I think sometimes we lock in on Devontae because we know he's had some bad decision-making in the past. And when he has his 1 or 2 or maybe 2 in a row, then we get into this mindset that it's bad Devontae. He did not turn the ball over. But those plays, like Chad mentioned, do stand out to us with Devontae. We hope that he has more of those Florida State games. Let's talk about Doron Davis. When he came to Indiana, he was really thought of as an outstanding post player, and unfortunately he's just had a string of injuries, and it's just hard to watch him play. Not from a negative standpoint.
Achilles is a killer.
Negative standpoint, just you hurt for the young man. It just seems like he's struggling out there to do the things that he's capable of, and then he gets the fouls quickly and has to sit and then doesn't get any run in the second half. Ryan, do you think that'll change here down the stretch, or is it just maybe a couple games or two where the matchup is there for Durant?
Given what we saw last season and this season, it's really hard for me to see a major change in Durant coming. That said, and some people were mentioning it in our live chat that Durant is a guy who could help Indiana win Big Ten games. If Joey Brunt gets fouled or somebody's injured or gets into trouble early, he's a guy who could come in and score on the low block, and he's a veteran who can get in the way defensively. He's also a guy who you're not going to go up and over easily. He's going to foul you. He's going to make you feel it. I mean, he's a guy who can do so much. He's a veteran presence. Archie Miller mentioned a week ago, or maybe it was a week and a half ago, that when they were struggling after that Wisconsin game, Doron was the one who was the vocal leader, who got everybody lined up, got everybody where they needed to be, and kept everybody focused when they could have just wilted after that, especially on that quick turnaround to go to New York and play UConn. He was a guy who was cited as a leader. And you expect that out of your seniors. And Doron is a guy who we've seen show leadership in the past. But I certainly think that you can't write Doron off because he's a guy who can help win you a game. And certainly we've seen him operate in the post in the past. And if he can just catch, a whiff of that, maybe he can be a guy who can give you 10 minutes a game and score you 8 points and grab some rebounds and, be a 5 extra fouls for you on the interior. Obviously that Achilles injury that he had it's devastating. I think it's the most devastating injury you can suffer as a basketball player. And most guys who have it are never the same. They might be able to still play, but they're not the same. It's just you lose lift from one of your legs completely, and you lose the ability to sprint, and you lose short area quickness and things like that. You saw it with a guy like Kobe Bryant had never let an injury bother him in his career, and he got it as he was getting older, and he was never the same ever. And we're going to see what happens with Kevin Durant, another guy who suffered a devastating Achilles injury. So it's just one of those that, since I was a kid, people said, if you have that Achilles injury, you're never going to be the same. So expecting, Doron to be a 20-minute player who's going to get you 10 and 7 or something like that is probably foolish. But I think he can help Indiana win some games this year. And so you got to keep him in the rotation. You got to keep him playing, and he's got to try and stay out of foul trouble. That's the big thing, because when he gets 2 fouls early, it appears Archie goes other ways and doesn't go back to him.
I don't see him being anything more than 10th or 11th off the bench, and matchup wise, just based on where he is playing at this point. I wish that were different, because I thought when he got back in last year, he really did some nice things. Chad, I'm going to change it up here a little bit as segment 2 is starting to wind down a little bit. And Jerome Hunter, we're going to talk about him because he sat out all last year, and then the mystery was whether he was going to play. And then once he was said to be cleared, everyone was thinking about his ranking as a recruit and his offensive abilities. And it's been a little bit of a slow growth for Jerome in the first 12 games. Where do you see Jerome Hunter the rest of the season, and what kind of impact will he have for the Indiana Hoosiers?
He's one of those guys that you can tell he's just one click away from finding that rhythm finally. He looks like he's so close defensively. He's playing pretty well. He's staying with his guy. As a guy that's been out for so long, who's been watching practice, it's good at least to see that he's up to speed on that side, so he's at least not falling off and losing a lot of playing time for that reason. But on his offensive side, he has great vision. He's got a good shot. It's been looking pretty good. It's just an inch from going in. It's so close from going in. I think he's a guy that once that clicks over, that confidence, he'll get that final last tick of confidence that he needs. And he's going to be a great guy to have in there, to be able to put in there at that 3 position where we're not as deep as we are in other places. And he'll be able to contribute, I think, quite a bit.
Ryan, what kind of minutes do you see if Jerome's playing at his best and he gets in an offensive flow, he understands the defense? He's averaging just over around 10 minutes a game, I believe. I don't have the stats in front of me. What kind of minutes does he get, and what does he do for this Indiana team if he gets to be the Jerome Hunter, freshman Jerome Hunter that we kind of expect?
20 minutes a game, I think, easy. If this is a guy, and Chad's right, his shot has looked good, relieving his hand. As Coach noted, it's been a little flat to me off air. It's been a little flat, but his release is fine. He squares up, he's fine. But it's those little millimeters off your finger when you're not sure if you should be shooting it and you don't feel confident. It's that split second on your release where you maybe hold it a little longer or shoot it a little fast or whatever. That can be the difference. When that ball is rotating that fast, that can be the difference between a make and a miss. He's had some go in and out. He's had some, just clang off the back iron, missing it by just an inch. Once he starts to see some go down and has that, confidence build, I agree with Chad. I think this is a guy who can really hit some outside shots. I also think that it's been really encouraging from him to see him scoring on the interior. He had a nice bucket against Notre Dame where I thought he got fouled and finished at the rim off a good pass.
He's tough.
Yeah. And you're starting to see that, and he's starting to see that he can do things for this team, even if he's not hitting outside shots, posting him up a little more. I think that guy has the instincts around the basket to score. And then his defense has really stepped up. He and Demezy Anderson look worlds better than they did 10 games ago, which is impressive by both of them. They're putting in the work and they're winning. defensively. So they're never going to be lights out defenders who shut down the opponent's best player or anything like that. But if they can hold their own on defense, it lets the better defenders play more freely. So, yeah, 20 minutes. I could definitely see Jerome playing 20 minutes this year, 20, 25, and in a game where he's on fire, 30 even. But again, as Archie has said, and as we even said before the season, this is basically his true freshman season, because it wasn't like he got to be a redshirt last year where you gain strength and get better and working in practice and stuff. He was sidelined. So he's essentially a true freshman. And he's, we got to sort of be patient with him in a way you wouldn't for another redshirt freshman.
So those are 4 of your Indiana Hoosiers who have not played all the minutes, a lot of them due to injuries or coming back off of injuries that, if they play up to their capabilities, will bring a lot to the Indiana Hoosiers in the remaining games in the Big Ten and the game against Arkansas. So that was our take. We have some questions coming up in our third segment. We'll answer your questions. So stick around with us here on the Assembly Call. All right, we are at like 45. So we got about 8-9 minutes left for questions.
Cool. Are you guys checking out the chat? Because I dropped a note.
I hadn't been.
I'm in it a little bit.
Cool. Let's keep it there. Keep an eye on it during the last. I meant our chat, not the.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have it open.
Chat. Just so we know how much time we have left and things.
Yeah, we got to get out at 49:24. And I'm sitting at 40:56 on the recorder, but I think I started it about 10 seconds before we got the music going. So, yeah, 49:34 will be good to go on that. I dropped off the Race Thompson one just because he has not been hurt this year, and we were running.
And we talk about him all the time because I consistently bring him up.
And I think Chad, you're right. There must be something. He's not practicing well or something, because he gets run. Something going on.
He's got Archie. I think Archie's watched him closer, because he had that one post up where he looked lost in the Notre Dame game, where he kept spinning around, couldn't find the basket, couldn't find anyone to go to and everything. And there was a shot that went to kind of you saw the bench the next thing, and Arch was just furious. And he went out and he never really saw the game ever again.
But it's so funny. The ancillary things he does defensively and on the boards are so good that it's like, but I get it. Look, they're trying to play 11 guys, and they're going to go with the guys who are more consistent. I think I was looking at his stats preparing for this segment, and hold on. He's averaging on the season, he's averaging 12 minutes and he's averaging 4.1 rebounds. Like, that's a lot for 12 minutes of action, especially when he's out there a lot with Trace, who gobbles up a ton of rebounds. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out for him.
All right. Any questions here that you want to hit? I copied some from the
Jay's got an average question, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that would be good for whoever's doing the show next Thursday. Is there a show next Thursday? It would be the first one of the new year.
The all-decade team?
The all-decade team, I think, needs...
Yeah, that's a lot. We should probably do that as a segment.
As a segment.
What New Year's gift would you give Archie and the team's a good one? With only 2 quad 3-4, that leaves 17 opportunities. I think that's a good one for you, Coach.
Okay. Let's start with the New Year's gift for both of you, and then I'll take the quad 3 or 4, and then we'll go down to Scott's question about rankings matter anymore, and then be watching for time.
Cool. That works. Then we can ask just random, what are you doing?
Then there's some more down there that have been left over from times, and then we can chit-chat afterwards.
Just keep putting how much time we have in the chat every 2 minutes or so we all know.
And then I always got this.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
I'll interrupt.
As soon as somebody finishes something, feel free to interrupt. Yeah, don't jump in.
All right.
Let's do it. Let's get this one done.
Yep.
It's on the books.
All right, here we go.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Ryan Phillips and Chatmob Chad. Remember, you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup even during the offseason, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. It's now time for our mailbag. All questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community at assemblycall.com/community. And we'll start off with this question here. Jack Forney says, what New Year's gift would you give to Archie and the team? Chad, we'll start off with you. What would you give as a New Year's gift?
Every single rabbit's foot that is available out there. Last year, I would have given that as well because all the voodoo priestesses in New Orleans seem to be giving hexes against us and everything, at least knock on every piece of wood I have around me, has been seeming to go pretty well as far as that this year. And if we can keep all of those uncontrollables that affected us last year at bay, all that bad luck, all those shooters that got hot that had never been hot before.
Oh my gosh, that was horrible.
If we can do that, then it's going to be a happy year for us. So I wish that upon him. Yes.
Ryan, your
health.
Coach.
Health in the new year. You know, always people say, I wish you health in the new year. I give you health in the new year. No, I think health, some a Ryan Phillips shooting seminar maybe is a good thing. We can maybe put a video together and just send it to them. Old VHS tapes work. But no, health is the big thing. And you just want to see these guys playing at their peak ability. There were so many injuries last year that it was just such bad luck. And so this year, as Chad said, luck, but just health.
There you go, Coach. You got some gifts headed your way. Jonathan Goodman asked this question. With only 2 quad 3-4 games remaining, that leaves 17 opportunities in quad 1 and 2 range. What do you expect our record will be in those tough games? For Andy and Coach, based on that, what do you estimate our seed line to be? Jonathan, that's a great question. It's still rather early in the whole bracketology world because the rankings have not fully developed with all the metrics, but Indiana, for most bracketologists right now, are a 6-7 seed with their net ranking at 30 and the one big win against Florida State. With that being said, 17 opportunities in quad 1 and 2 really bodes well for Indiana and the rest of the Big Ten. You split those and go 9 and 8 in those opportunities. That's 11 quad 1 and 2 wins. That's going to be hard to keep out, especially if you're in the mid-range 4, 5, 6, 7 in the Big Ten with those kinds of quad 1 wins. So the Big Ten being strong is going to help Indiana defeat Arkansas, get another good win, and then add those opportunities in the Big Ten. And I think Indiana will be looking at probably its ceiling, depending on how many wins, probably a 4 or 5 if everything goes well, and there's a lot of wins, and probably the low if they split 500, you're looking at 7 through 9. Anything under that, and Indiana's lost a few games that we don't want, and then we'll be on the bubble, and everyone will be nervous. So our next question here, Scott Yoakum asks, in theory, ranking should reflect performance, but I'm not convinced as much of these days. I'd rather see team development. So Ryan, do rankings matter anymore? And I think he might be talking about the coaches poll and the AP poll when you have Ken Pom and you have the net for the tournament. Do rankings matter anymore, and why?
Not really. I mean, and they don't in college football either. I mean, especially not early in the season. Maybe they start to matter in mid-January and February where you're trying to line up, who should be beating who and all those things. I mean, college football, it doesn't matter until October when the undefeated teams start weeding each other out. And I think in college basketball, it's the same thing. I mean, this year it's been crazy. Every number one team just keeps losing. There's no dominant team that's going to sit there and sort of dominate all year. The back end, I mean, you're seeing things where Indiana's not even, Indiana's barely scratching the surface of votes, and they're 11-1, have a couple nice wins. San Diego State arguably has the best resume so far, and they're 15th. I mean, you look at some of these things, and and of a best resume of an undefeated team, I should say. And so these things, they don't really matter until conference play starts sorting itself out. And then maybe, they do matter to sort of line teams up. But I'm far more worried about Ken Palm rankings and things like that, because they're actually statistical, and it's not an eye test. It's not what you think you saw. You don't have, a team beats Duke and then jumps 30 spots in the rankings when, or beats North Carolina and jumps big time in the rankings. Well, North Carolina's not playing that well this year. So I would much rather focus on the actual analytics of what is happening on the court, as opposed to worrying about an eye test or who beat who in the rankings.
And if you read Gary Parrish, he always does a poll attacks column after the AP comes out, and there's always someone that moves the team up 8 spots after losing 2 games or something.
Yeah,
because they weren't paying as much attention.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about the polls is they're based on human thought, which is imperfect. And there you go. I mean, and also the coaches poll and things like that. Those guys don't have a chance to watch all the games or pay attention, and they make mistakes.
Chad, your thought about the importance of Indiana being ranked in the top 25?
Yeah, it's not important. It's how we feel, how they play, who shows up, and the W's on it. I mean, on the edge, it's shown. Actually, if I was a coach this year, I'd be telling all the voters not to vote me number 1. It's just a kind of it's exactly what it is. This early in the season, it's just as Joel said, I think in the chat, it's just Twitter clicks. It's just for Twitter clicks and excitement and something to argue over.
All right. Our last question. This comes from Chris. Tougher rebuild, Indiana or Dayton? When Archie Miller took over.
I don't even know what Dayton was like when Archie took over. To you guys, they've always kind of had it. They've always had like a nice basketball program, though. Maybe not a top mid-major, but they've always had a decent basketball program.
It took him about three years to get to where he won some games in the tournament at Dayton, but that's about what I know.
I think with the spotlight and how big the program is, that obviously gives a huge edge to the Indiana transition. And then I don't know what the team was like philosophy-wise at Dayton before he came, but night and day when he came to Indiana, so that made it tough. I'm not really sure. What I will say is that spotlight might make it easier to get your players and get this and to get the resources and all that. But the spotlight being on you also makes some things a lot harder. And it can be a difficult situation for a coach, especially given the history Indiana's had over the last 20 years and people waiting for a collapse, because that's been the history. So I think there are elements of it that make it easier and elements of it that will probably make it harder at Indiana, because if you don't hit on all cylinders early, people are going to be asking for your job.
Yeah, and I think people don't think Indiana's a rebuild, but to do Indiana right, like Texas Tech and Virginia and some of those schools, if you want to do it right, you had to rebuild, and you had to rebuild from the bottom up. And I think a lot of people sometimes lose patience with that. So that's going to we'll play this
that's
first.
It. We're done. No more questions.
That's the official mark. Always got to play that. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing most of the music you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next Thursday night. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank everybody for coming out.
And that's a wrap.
All right.
Good
Hope everybody had a wonderful holiday. Thank you for tuning in.
Always good.
And
experiencing
the new view.
The pretty. It's pretty.
I know.
Pretty,
right?
Ryan.
See, now you can actually see what's behind me because
can almost read his diploma.
Yeah. Yep. There it is.
Parks and Recreation Department.
It's a certificate. It's not a diploma. I wish that they had told me that my journalism degree would not be worth the paper it's printed on, but they told you that after you graduate, not beforehand. So, go IU.
I think Indiana's going to be. I think Indiana's going to do fine against Arkansas on Sunday. I do too. They're going to play.
I like that matchup.
I do. They're not going to be able to guard the 3-point shooting, and they don't shoot very well, but they shoot a lot of them. But I think
nobody who plays us seems to shoot well, and then they play us. And
yeah, and then the guy will bank one in, and it
Yeah.
could go off for 3 or 4.
What kind of a crowd do we expect, though?
It's always dicey around this time of year because the students aren't back. When the students aren't back, it's always dicey.
Well,
But sometimes-
Andy Bottoms, Andy will be there with his family, so it'll be wild and crazy there.
Crazy.
But it's a 6 p.m. game. So
Yeah, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or something.
those usually do better than the earlier games. I saw they play Maryland at noon. That's gonna be awful.
My dad's peeking in to say hey.
Hey, go Hoosiers! That's awesome. You're not in the basement, are you, Chad?
No.
Broadcasting from your parents' basement would be
that'd
so
be
on
awesome.
the nose.
I'm back in my old room. Basement. No.
Is it just the parents' basement or any basement?
Yeah. Usually it's you're blogging from your mom's basement is my
No. Oh, funny.
I do have the new, by the way, guys, I want to plug, I do have the new Assembly Call hoodie. It is insanely comfortable. Jared sent it to Madeline and I for Christmas. So get it.
Nice.
It's even, I don't know how it's even more comfortable than the Bison hoodie, which I love and have and will remain in my rotation. But this is awesome.
Got my old Bison on.
Yeah.
Hey, chat mobbers, if you're going to be at the bowl game, I'll be there. I'll be at the tailgate beforehand and everything. Come up, say hey. Check it out. I know Joel's going to be there. I know he said he was going to be there.
It's January 2nd, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
7 o'clock.
I get those bowl game dates confused.
Yep.
Yeah, we got a game the next night on Friday night, so I can't make it down.
And you put the bar away for the year anyway. It'd be tough to truck that thing all the way
Bar's
down.
sitting back here somewhere.
Yeah, saw it.
Yep, and back in the corner.
Truck that all the way to Jacksonville.
I would, though. That bar gets a lot of play. I get a lot of people stopping by. Anthony Thompson stopped by at an away game tailgate.
Oh,
nice.
Fred Glass has been to the bar.
Nice.
Chris Lamonis.
You gotta do a lot. Yeah, you should start getting people to sign it. And and you got to do a lot more social media work with that thing. You just get the Assembly Call login and start doing stuff with it.
I got to stay sober.
Well, that's true.
I don't want to.
Yeah. You know what? Let's talk to Amy about that. Let's have Amy do it.
I think that's the job for Amy to take over the Assembly Call social media at the tailgate.
Can't you ask where the tailgate thing is? The tailgate's like a building that's kind of attached to it. Just look on their website. They're doing
an IU tailgate, just a straight IU tailgate?
No, they do an IU one, and then 30, 40 minutes later, they do the one for Tennessee, but it's both in the same location.
Oh, cool. All right, guys, I got to have some dinner. It's 7 o'clock out here.
All righty. Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate you both.
I guess.
Appreciate you both. You guys were great.
Yep.
Thank you for paying attention, everybody. Have a great rest of your holiday. See you soon.
Thanks, guys.
All righty. We'll see you.